Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series. Tonight, drivers have just about completed the long and treacherous journey from last week's event back at the Las Vegas Bullring here to the Southern National Motorsports Park down in Lucama, North Carolina. So it's been quite a week for these late model stock car drivers, and that's definitely quite a week with the added pressure of our wide open championship this late into the season. We have 7 races down in the books so far, and we have 6 different winners this season, with Tyler McRae just last week being the first driver to pick up a 2-time win this season. So, plenty of points up for grabs here tonight. We are coming into our final 4 rounds of the season, so clock is ticking for these drivers if they want to start picking up major points here. But nonetheless, we should see quite the exciting race here at the relatively high banks of this 0.4 mile or 0.64 long kilometer short track. That said, before we take it down trackside and start getting ready for these 101 laps of late model action, if you want to check out the Attrition Simulations Campus League and come compete with us in the Oval Series or any of the other series that ASRC puts on, be sure to check out www.asrcracing.com or head to @ASRCRacing on Twitter. Currently, ASRC hosts the Oval Series here at 9 p.m. Eastern every Monday night for 101 lap late model races. And then on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, they host the Dirt Series featuring the Pro Late Model heat races and all of that good stuff at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, or at 9 p.m. Eastern, excuse me, on Tuesday nights. That said, qualifying is just about in the books here tonight, so let's go ahead and head down trackside and get a quick look at our starting lineup here tonight. Starting out on the pole, our only driver to pick up multiple wins so far this season, that's going to be the 99 of Tyler McRae for Driving Bombs Racing. Starting at his outside in the number 45 is going to be Mr. Travis Sukup. Third place going to go back to 3-time champion Brian Sabelski in that number 85 machine. Fourth place going to go to league admin Jason Gardner in the number 93. Fifth place going to go back to Eric Gahn in that 51 machine. Sixth place going to go back to Jason Mong in the number 70. Rolling out in P number 7, going to be Garrett Streets in the 15. And finally, rounding out our field here tonight, though I'm not sure if he is making the grid or not, is going to be the number 8 of Bill Watkins. So, 7 cars for sure making the grid, and it looks like our 8th driver of Bill Watkins is not going to be making the call to the grid here tonight. So that's going to be a 7-car race here for y'all at the Southern National Motorsports Park. 101 laps up for grabs, potentially up to 104, as we've seen with a couple of races this season that have had green-white checkered overtime attempts. So we'll just have to see what these drivers have in store. Certainly a lot of competitive cars in this field. Back last week on Halloween night at the Las Vegas Bullring, we only had a turnout of 4 cars, and even then the margin of victory was within just tenths of a second. So definitely a very exciting show being put on. Currently looking at the point standings, it looks like Garrett Streets is just barely on top of things with Brian Sabelski just behind, so lots of rivalries throughout this field that could potentially be settled tonight. That said, pace cars off, we are going green flag racing here tonight at the Southern National Motorsports Park. Tyler McRae off to a pretty decent lead as a driver up in the wall. That looks like that's going to be the number 70 of Jason Mong, scraping the outside just a little bit. That's going to knock him back a couple of positions. And the 51 getting very sideways, and so is Sabelski. Brian Sabelski around, going to bring out the first caution of the evening. And just like that, we have completely shaken this field up. Brian Zabelski already down several positions from where he qualified here tonight, only 2 laps in. Let's see if we can't take a look back and see what happened to the driver of that number 85 NTO entry. Going up a little bit to try and hold off the 93 of Jason Gardner, and just potentially the tiniest little of taps there. I'm not even entirely sure that contact was made there, but a very rough start for our 3-time champion of that number 85. Let's see if we can't take a look back here. Let's ride on board with the rear view camera of the number 85. If our truck can't go ahead and get that pulled up for us. Looking back at the number 93 of Jason Gardner, I can't tell if contact was made there or not, race fans, but either way, it was incredibly close, and it looks like that is going to send the number 85 down onto pit lane. That said, very short pit stop, only 9 seconds, so no damage on that number 85 race car. Looks like he might have actually been using that yellow to go ahead and take fuel, because there is a little bit of uncertainty about that. No tires for the number 85 though, because that pit stop was way too short for there to have been tires put on that 85 machine. Gonna cycle him back to the back of the field, but he didn't lose any spots because he was already at the back of the field from that spin. But green flag back out because the caution was so close to the start of the race. We are going to have a single file restart. That is a rule here in the ASRC Oval Series. If there's a subsequent caution within 2 laps of a previous caution, then it will be a single file restart instead of the traditional double file. Brian Sabelski working his way around Jason Mong. That's already going to give him 1 spot back on the leaderboards for him, but he's still got a long way to go to get back up into the podium where he qualified. Tyler McRae still leading the race pretty handily, but his teammate of Travis Sukup is just behind. These 2 drivers spend pretty much all of the week practicing and sharing setup tips together, so only makes sense that these 2 setting incredibly similar lap times to each other and both being up near the front. But that is not to discount Jason Gardner, who is also setting lap times fairly similar to that of our race leaders. A bit closer behind, Garrett Streets looking to try and make the pass on Eric Gahn. Gahn going to go way up high. It looks like Streets is going to be able to execute the pass. Brian Sabelski going to see if he can't try and sneak his way under there too while Eric Gahn's pushed up high, but it's not going to be enough to make that pass work. So Sabelski still stuck back in that 6th position, trying to see if he can't figure out a way around that number 51 machine. Definitely a bit of pressure from behind for Eric Gahn. Besides, oh, speaking of Eric Gahn, there's a caution on the speedway that yet again, another spin on the racetrack. It looked like that was a single car incident, but we will have to take a quick look back here and see what happened. Looking at that number 51 of Eric Gahn going down into turn number 3. And sure enough, just a little bit too hot into the corner and the rear end snapped out on him, and thankfully no damage to that number 51, but that is going to bring out our 2nd caution of the evening. Let's take a quick look back here and ride on board with the number 51 machine. Heading down into turn number 3 just behind Garrett Streets, and Just a little bit too hard is all it takes to unsettle the balance of this car, and that's going to send him around for our second caution of the evening. That's going to be another position for Brian Sabelski, though, now back up into the 5th spot, so still working on his way back into the podium, and look who is right in front of him. That's going to be the number 15 of Garrett Streets. Sabelski had been leading the point standings all of this season up until the final race, where Streets managed to squeak past him by just a point or two. So Streets now going to be our second points leader of the season. And needless to say, Brian Sabelski is going to be trying to do everything in his power to try and take the lead back. Especially considering last season he was the points leader for most of the season and in a very close contention with another driver, but unfortunately was unable to attend the final race, and that was the nail in the coffins for his championship. So looking to try and put another win under his belt for season 8. That said, he's got a bit of a work to do to get around these other 4 cars in front of him. A solid start from everyone on the field. Jason Mong going to go up high and be battling it out with the 51 of Gone. Gone spun out just a little bit ago to bring out that caution. Now, bit of a scrape against the wall for Sabelski there, actually. Keeping that late model pointed in the right direction, though, so still plenty of opportunities to try and make back lost positions. We are only 21 laps into this race, so clock is ticking for these drivers, but there is still a bit of time to be a bit patient. Let the cars in front of you wear the rubber off of these iRacing.com branded tires, and another strafe against the wall for Sabelski. Beating up the right side of that late model, definitely not what you want to do. You can see the sheet metal on the right front crumpled up just a little bit. It's very minor, but that does add up over the course of a race. Sabelski, of course, also the only driver to have pitted so far this race, so should this race continue to run green, fuel could very much become an issue for these late model stock car drivers, and we could see Sabelski make some moves just on pit strategy. Looking back up at the front, Tyler McRae, still our race leader, followed closely behind by the 45 of Sukup. Only 0.3 of a second separate these two drivers, and I'll tell you what, they may be teammates, but both of them are gunning with everything they've got to try and pick up another win. Sukup so far, no wins this season, but McRae, just in front of him, is the first driver to have picked up multiple, so a little bit of added pressure on Sukup to try and get a leg up on his teammate here. A little bit further behind, Streets getting pressured from behind by Sabelski, but at the same time, Gardner also very close in this battle, having to watch through his rearview mirror to make sure everything is all hanky-dory between Streets and Sabelski just behind him. Streets going to scrape the wall there just a little bit. You can see a little bit of damage on his right front now too. Just about the same amount that's on Sabelski's, which probably has some sort of poetic meaning here, considering that he and Sabelski are so close to each other in the championship and now have identical damage on their late model stock cars. That said, Jason Gardner starting to build a little bit of a comfortable gap between the two, and it looks like Jason Mong is down on pit lane and he is taking tires, so definitely an interesting strategy coming out of that number 70 machine, and it looks like, disregard that, race fans, it does look like Mr. Jason Mong might be retiring for the evening. Or he's having transponder issues, either or, we're not quite sure. We're going to have to give him a few minutes to see if he can't get that transponder worked out on that number 70 machine, or if he is actually calling it for the evening. If he does, that's still going to leave it at a 6-car race here tonight, so plenty of points still up for grabs, and McRae and Sukup definitely putting themselves both in a good position to be claiming a whole lot of them. Sukup is pretty close to McRae in the standings, actually. McRae's win at our previous race at the Las Vegas Bull Ring did build a pretty decent buffer between the two, but even then, they're still fairly close to each other, around the 8th position or so on our championship standings. So bit of battles all around the field and battles all around our points standing. But as we go longer into this race, things are starting to get spread out just a little bit. Drivers finally being a little bit more patient with each other. Looks like Eric Gahn also going to be pulling his late model down into pit lane in that number 51 machine. Eric Gahn not pulling. Sure enough, Eric Gahn has retired from tonight's race. And Jason Mong is nowhere to be seen. It still says that Mong is registered for the competition, but his car is nowhere to be seen anywhere on the premises of the speedway, so we might have to consider Mong as retired from this race as well, but technically speaking, he can come back, and if he does, he can pick up the position on the newly retired Eric Gahn. 5 cars left in this race, but that is not going to be making anyone any less competitive. The gap has closed between McRae and Sukup to less than 0.2 of a second. That 45 machine trying to do anything in his power to get around his teammate here. Putting on a very good run. Sukup actually was faster than McRae last time by, and he was faster than McRae on that lap as well, so Sukup actually setting faster times around this short track every single lap. It's just a matter of figuring out how to get that nose up underneath the left rear of the 99. A little bit of a dive there by the 45. Might have been considering trying to use a little bit of that bumper and get the 99 up out of the way, but it's not going to work out, and that is going to cost him just a little bit of ground on the track. Still incredibly close battling between these two cars. He's certainly thinking about trying to make the move every single time by, but just not enough real estate to make it happen. McRae doing an expert job of locking down that inside line, and at a track like this, the inside line definitely where you want to be, and that apron, as you've seen from the 2 spins we've had so far this race, can be incredibly dangerous if you put even just the slightest amount of your tires down on it. So unless McRae makes a mistake, Sukup might have to utilize the bumper to get around that number 99, because if he goes any lower than he's going now, it's going to make the car incredibly unstable and potentially send him around. A little bit further back in the back, Sabelski also closing the gap on streets. These two drivers battling it out for the lead in the championship standings. We are on race number 8 here out of 12 in total, so things are definitely going to be coming to a close shortly, and these drivers doing everything in their power to try and scrape up the last little points they can to get under their belts. There is 4 drop weeks, however, so it's not the end of the world if these drivers have a bad race. But needless to say, you don't want to burn all of your drop weeks on avoidable incidents when sometimes life emergencies happen and you need to use one of them for things outside of the race. So definitely a lot of consideration going into these drivers' actions. Don't want to waste any of those 4 drops if they can manage to. But as the championship comes to a close in these next coming weeks, I don't think it will play too big of a factor, at least for our two championship leaders, because I believe both of them have been present for just about every race. Jason Gardner having to start to looking in his mirror just a little bit. Streets is slowly but surely closing the gap a little bit on him in that number 93 machine. Jason has been racing here in the series part-time, but he also does a lot of the administrative work behind the scenes for the ASRC Oval Series, and you can see him here in that number 93 me entry. I want to go fast. And he sure as heck is going fast. That time by, he set a 15.5 second lap around the speedway. And of course, for those of you who have not indulged in too much circle car racing shenanigans and culture, that number 93 machine is a reference to the movie Talladega Nights, that 93 machine driven by Ricky Bobby. Cybelski once again closing the distance on Streets, really just trying to find any way he can to get around that number 15 machine. Should things finish the way they are right now, Streets will maintain the lead of the championship going into our next race at Phoenix, a track that we have not been to in the late models for the ASRC Oval Series. We have been there in the street stock a couple of times, but never in the late model stock car. And I'll tell you what, race fans, Phoenix is a very different track than any track we have seen so far on the ASRC Oval Series calendar ever since broadcasting had begun for this series. So definitely going to be a bit of an exciting experience next week, going to a track that is a full mile long after being at all of these short bull rings like the Southern National Motorsports Park and of course the literal Las Vegas bull ring, coming in at only roughly 0.4 of a mile, and some tracks even smaller than that. I believe the bull ring was actually 0.37 of a mile, so definitely going to be quite the change of pace going from these short tracks to something a little bit more NASCAR styled, and who knows, we might just see a 7th unique victor emerge from that track. I do think we should take a little... Oh, trouble! Gardner into the wall there. That's going to allow Streets to close the gap even more. Streets looking down to the inside, going to try and see if he can't utilize Gardner's mistake there to make a pass. Not quite going to cut it that time by, but now he does have a little bit of a nose up under there, but Gardner's going to get himself situated and get everything worked out nice and orderly. But I do think we need to take a moment to criticize the person who made the schedule just a little bit, because think about it, back at round 6, Lanier National Speedway, Brazelton, Georgia. Next race, the bull ring at Las Vegas. Then we come back here at Southern National Motorsports Park in North Carolina. And then next week we go to Phoenix, Arizona. I don't understand how these late model drivers are managing to go back and forth across the United States literally every single week. They really should have consolidated some of these races that are in similar regions into similar places on the schedule, but you know what, that's just me. I'm just the commentator. I'm not allowed to make decisions like this, and I'm sure there is some sort of untold circle car wisdom that I am simply not understanding on the schedule decisions there. That said, this battle is heating up. It looks like Garrett Streets might be starting to consider using the bumper. Jason Gardner going to get up into the wall again, and that's going to allow Streets to get down below him. Streets is going to make the pass on Cybelski, on Gardner that time by, and it looks like Cybelski going to be getting around as well. Gardner scraping the wall yet again. That's definitely throwing down his lap times a pretty decent amount there. Definitely not what that number 93 wanted to see. And now, as we officially have 70 laps completed and in the books, Garrett Streets is by far our biggest mover here tonight, up 4 positions from where he qualified. Every other driver on the speedway has either lost positions from where they started or is still in the same position from where they started. So Garrett Streets definitely having the most improvement in position so far this race, and now that he's around Gardner, he is sailing away from Sabelski, already building a more than half of a second of a gap between himself and the 85 NTO entry. Speaking of NTO, though, Brian Zabelski is a Twitch streamer who does Twitch stream pretty much all of his races here in the ASRC Oval Series and on other races on the iRacing.com platform. So definitely be sure to go check out his Twitch channel at twitch.tv/NihonTiger. On top of that, he also does a pretty decent amount of Minecraft on his channel, so definitely be sure to go check out twitch.tv Nihon Tiger if that is something that you are interested in. Back up on the front, Sukup still trying to figure out his way around McRae. Only 25 laps left to go as we cross the line there, so clock is definitely ticking for that number 45. If he wants to make a move on his teammate, he's going to have to do it pretty dang soon. It's just going to be a question of if he has enough speed under that hood to catch up to the 99 and put the bumper to him on corner entry. Just enough to move him up the track a little bit, and that's all it will take to execute the pass. But you can see that 45 getting a little bit squirrely through the corners, so it looks like his tires might be having a little bit of an issue. And sure enough, looking at the timing and scoring here, that gap, which was only less than 0.2 of a second, now all the way back to more than half a second. Speaking of gaps, though, Brian Sabelski has majorly caught up to Garrett Streets here. He's narrowed that gap down tremendously in just the past couple of laps. We will have to see if he's able to get that late model around the number 15 machine, because he is battling for a podium position here, and with only 20 laps to go, unless something pretty dramatic happens, it looks like these top two are going to be sailing away with this race. So it's all going to be coming down for the third place position between Streets and Sabelski. Sabelski pretty comfortably keeping a 0.3 of a second gap between himself and Streets, but unless he can close the gap, there's not going to be much he'll be able to do to get around him unless he gives him a little bit of a love tap, or we see a repeat of what happened to Jason Gardner, where one of the cars scrapes the wall and all of their momentum just gets thrown out the window. Sabelski is definitely narrowing down that gap, though, 0.2 of a second between these two drivers. Definitely getting a bit close for comfort. Garrett Street's going to have to start being in full focus mode. If he starts looking a little bit too hard in that mirror, it could be very easy to get overwhelmed and make a mistake. But so far, he's doing a pretty comfortable job. 85 going to look down to the inside, and he is going to get down alongside him. That said, he's going to end up on the apron, and it's going to kill a lot of his momentum. Side by side into turn 3, though, and it looks like Sabelski is going to make the pass. Streets makes it back. Side by side across the line that time by. These two drivers definitely have a whole lot to offer each other, but it looks like Brian Sabelski is going to be successfully executing the pass there. Brian Sabelski putting himself back up on the podium, but still 14 laps for Streets to make the pass right on back. Still only 0.2 of a second between these two drivers, so that pass might have worked out for Sabelski, but Streets is not giving up that easily by any means whatsoever. Streets backing off just a little bit there to try and get a better entry coming in here to turn 3. Not going to work very well, though. Still now 0.3 of a second between these two drivers, so a little bit of time lost for Streets. 12 laps to go, gonna make that 11 as these leaders cross the line, so time is running out for that number 15 machine. And considering we have not seen any drivers pitting for fuel, it does not look like Sabelski's move to pit lane early on in this race is doing him any favors, but who knows? We have had freak accidents in this league before, you never know. Maybe Sabelski is secretly the only car that has fuel to the end. That is entirely possible, but considering the lack of urgency in any of these other cars to get down on the pit lane, I do think that Sabelski's splash and dash might have been a little bit unnecessary. Regardless, though, after a spin sent him all the way back to the back, here Sabelski is battling it out in the final podium position, so whether or not his pit stop was actually necessary, he's still battling it out up in the front. That said, we are currently looking at the closest battle on the speedway. McRae now having a full 2-second lead over Sukup, with another 3-second gap between Sukup and Sabelski. So by far, these two late models, the closest drivers on the track. With 6 laps to go, it does look like Mong's position will be finalized in that 7th spot. Not enough time left in the race for him to pass Gon, even if he were to come back out on the track right now. Big high five up in the air, though. 5 laps to go around the Southern National Motorsports Park before these drivers have to pack it back up and drive all the way back across the United States to head to the Phoenix Raceway next week. 4 laps to go now. Streets 0.3 of a second behind Sabelski still. Not a whole lot of room left to try and catch up now. If he's going to want to make a move happen, he's probably going to have to utilize a little bit of the chrome horn, but in order to be able to do that, he does have to actually catch up to Sabelski first, and he is doing it ever so slightly. He does take a higher exit off the corner, gets a little bit loose, and sure enough, he just fell back to 0.4 of a second just from that little wiggle. It just goes to show how much of a slight little mistake can screw things up for these drivers. White flag up in the air, and sure enough, heading down into turn 3 with a 0 opposition, going to be the 99 of Tyler McRae, taking home the checkered flag for the 3rd time this season. Travis Sukup in that 45 coming across in P number 2. Then finally rounding out our podium, going to be Ryan Sabelski, followed very closely behind by Garrett Streets and Jason Gardner, taking up the final car on the speedway and the last car on the lead lap. Tyler McRae going to head that number 99 down into victory lane, and we are going to get a burnout out of him this time around. Tyler McRae definitely putting on a little bit of a late season threat to these other drivers, and it sounds like the 99's engine might have exploded, but nope, we're all good. He's A-okay, race fans. I'll tell you what, McRae coming into the race roughly in the around 6th position in the standings, but as the only driver to secure multiple wins, another win under his belt is going to be a massive boon for McRae and may very well put him in contention for the actual full season championship. But that said, race fans, we will be right back, so don't go anywhere, and we will have interviews with your top 3 finishers here tonight. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back. 101 laps here at the Southern National Motorsports Park are now down in the books. And to start things off, how about we talk to our third place finisher, Mr. Brian Sabelski, who was also our second place finisher last week. And unfortunately, we weren't able to dial him up. So, Brian, how are you doing this week after two consecutive podiums?
My arms are a little tired, but other than that, I'm good.
Fair enough. I would imagine you've been doing a whole lot of wheeling in that number 85, and if you're having to drive across the country, what, three times now, and you're gonna have to do it again to go to Phoenix next week, I'd imagine you'd be pretty tired from running all across the country here. But regardless of that, you're here in the podium yet again, and you finished ahead of your I guess the best word for it would be rival going into this, who has been pretty much tied with you on the point standings for the past several races, so that might be enough to back you back up into the lead here. So,
Yep.
yeah. Well, do you have any particular thoughts going into Phoenix next week as the first ever proper long track we've been to in these late models?
I'm hoping I can do what I usually do at Phoenix and kind of do well.
Hoping to do well is always a solid plan, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that things will work out one way or another. We've seen Phoenix can be a little bit chaotic. Cough, cough, season one of the Oval Series, cough, cough. But
Yep.
things should be good, hopefully.
I hope so. Yeah, I know points haven't really been updated too much yet, so I'm kind of waiting to see how that all shakes out with myself and Garrett. But uh,
Yeah, I did
hopefully,
have to guess a little bit on the math there, but thankfully only four of y'all being in the race last week made it a little bit easy for me to figure out.
yeah. It's the second week in a row I finished ahead of him, so hopefully that kind of inches it up a little bit. I know I've got some. I got some good finishes. I got at least one good finish on Martinsville banked. So let's just I'm just gonna kind of hope that can kind of keep the momentum going here.
Sounds like a pretty solid plan. But before I send you off for the evening, the microphone is all yours, Mr. Sabelski. Is there anyone you'd like to thank on that side of that number 85 machine?
Just wanted to thank everyone who's out here hanging out in the Discord, hanging out in the Twitch stream. How's it going, everybody? Um, and that's about it. I do have another stream as usual on Thursday and Saturday as well for Suzuka. I'm going to be jumping back into endurance racing after an unplanned absence. So here's hoping that'll go well. Hopefully.
Well, Attrition is pretty dang good at doing their endurance races from what I'm seeing, so I'm sure everything will go well for y'all, and I wish you luck. And go check out his stream, twitch.tv/Nihon Tiger. He drives cars, and that's pretty cool.
I do. Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you next week at Phoenix.
Yep. Well, let's gonna try and bring home a good finish for the hometown, not the hometown, but the club regional folks,
The close enough to hometown.
close as I can get.
Alrighty, and it does not look like we've been able to get our second place finisher of Mr. Travis Sukup to pick up the radio, so we're going to go straight on to our now three-time race winner this season, Tyler. How are you feeling coming out of two back-to-back wins? And yeah, two back-to-back wins. I was thinking, wait, no, three back-to-back wins. I know what stats are. You're winning a bunch of races, Tyler. What the heck's going on?
Yeah, it's been a fun time. It's a fun little league here. The guys race pretty hard. I knew if you remember me telling you, I had it set up for here already, and I just had to dial it in for the longer run, as I figured that's what we were going to have. even though we had those couple of quick cautions in the beginning. And I just kind of got out there to a little small lead and backed her down a little bit to save that right front. And it ran pretty good. I could kind of do what I want with it. And Sukup, he was close a couple times. I even asked him if he wanted to go by me because he was right there on me. And he's like, no, I'm gonna stay right here. He said we're gonna race it out soon. And about lap 25 to go, I think it was like 25 to go, I picked it up, and I don't think he had anything left then.
Yeah, getting close to the end of the race there, it did look like Sukup was starting to get a little bit loose on corner exit, so he might have cooked those tires just a little bit more than you have, and sometimes that can make all the difference at these short tracks like this, but y'all both put on a heck of a run, and I believe y'all's fastest laps were a pretty solid, like, 10th faster than everyone else, so whatever y'all had under the hood of those late models definitely worked out well for y'all.
We actually were this race. We did run similar sets. We ran a couple official races during the week, and they're not as long, but they help a little bit figuring out a few things.
Yeah, well, all the practice you can get is always a good thing, and evidently it's worked out because now here you are picking up your third win of the season. And despite joining in on things a little late, of 3 wins back to back is definitely going to be rocketing up you to at least near the top of the standings, if not right up with Brian and Garrett. So who knows what these next 4 weeks could bring, but I can see you definitely vying for the championship with these two other drivers.
It would be interesting to see where I'm at in points. It's easy not to look at them and just run hard, but then you start looking at them, you start trying to figure out every little thing. Sometimes it gets to you, but it's fun running with the ASRC league, and having you stream it, and the guys just being good guys. So it's a fun time.
Well, it's always a blast to see you out here and having folks running with you. But before I send you off here tonight, the microphone for the third time in a row is all yours, Mr. McRae. Is there anyone like you to think on the side of that number 99 machine?
Yeah, again, I like to always point out the league, the ASRC league. It's a good organization. Seem to have a really fun time with them. Dropping bombs, all the guys, how much fun we had together. I think Steve even ran an official race with us one time too and worked on the setup. So Steve and Sukup, and actually shout out to my daughter. Found out I'm going to be a granddad the other day. So yes, I'm getting older.
Well, congratulations to y'all. That's great news.
It was definitely a surprise. Well, I wasn't quite ready, but that's life.
Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate you.
Thanks for coming out, and I look forward to seeing y'all running here at Phoenix next week.
Yes, sir. We'll see. I have to start from scratch. Maybe this setup might work there. Hopefully. All
You never know.
right. Take care.
You too. And you heard it here first, race fans. Hearing from our race winner of Tyler McRae and our third place finisher, Mr. Brian Sabelski. Definitely going to be shaking up the points some more here tonight. Sure enough, with McRae's third win in a row now, going to be making things very spicy for this championship, because another 30 points, so another win under his belt is going to be putting him pretty dang close to our race leaders in terms of points. So definitely going to have to keep an eye on that number 99 machine and see what he has under his belt for these remaining 4 races. That said, taking a look at our official race results, of course, Tyler McRae taking the win here tonight, followed by Travis Sukup in that number 45 machine, and Brian Sabelski rounding out the podium. 4th place going to go back to Garrett Streets in that 15, followed by Jason Gardner in the number 93. 6th place going to go back to Eric Gahn in the 51, followed by the number 70 of Jason Mong, and Finally, rounding out our field here tonight, gonna be the number 6 of Bill Watkins. That said, that's just about all we got for y'all here tonight for the ASRC Oval Series. Be sure to tune in same day, same time next week for 101 laps. I believe it's 101 laps, actually. Let me double check that. Sure enough, 101 laps around the Phoenix Raceway. So for those of you who just tuned into the NASCAR Championship this weekend, that's where we are going to be going. But we are going to be taking a little bit of a blast from the past because we're going to be heading to the 2008 version of Phoenix where the dog leg is all grass. So definitely be sure to tune into that next Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern. But for now, that's just about all we got. So thank you all for coming out, race fans, and I look forward to seeing you all at Phoenix. Have a good evening, y'all.